All right, folks, Vitek here from Wani, and with us today we have one and only Bobby Blitz of Overkill. How you doing, brother?
And a big hello to Metal Wani, and a big hello to India, and a big hello to the metal community.
There you go, grinding wheel. Just a couple of weeks before you guys are going to drop it. And for you as a musician, this waiting game since the record is completed, mixed, and then the release date, the gap in between these two is really annoying, isn't it?
You got it. You hit it exactly on the head. It's fucking annoying.
Definitely. I mean, you gotta wait for fans to listen to it, and then you get some feedback from them. So this period, but still, you guys have dropped a couple of tracks so far for the fans. How's it been so far?
Well, it's good. I mean, and I suppose for all good things we must wait. So I think that it's always hard for me to be objective about a newer release because I'm still caught up in it. It still feels like a whirlwind of writing and mixing and tweaking. So that's my last memory of the record. But when I try to sit back and look at this objectively, the feeling I get is that we brought out all the tools that we are good at using with regard to presentation and representation. And I mean heavy metal, thrash, rock and roll, punk, groove, epic feels, hardcore. I think the record contains all of it with the Overkill brand on top.
Absolutely, because been listening to the record for a while, and this is the first record for me since the trilogy. And when I say trilogy, I mean Ironbound, Electric Age, and White Devil, which more or less they feel somehow connected. But this one, you guys have explored a lot of classic metal elements. I hear a lot of Accept, I hear a lot of Black Sabbath, all these different classic heavy metal sound which you guys have brought in. But at the same time, you haven't lost the thrash essence of Overkill. Now that's something which is really great, how you guys have mixed it up and at the same time explored. So at this point of time of, in your career, what triggered this thought of kind of moving away from the existing sound and kind of explore much more?
Well, I agree with you on the trilogy. I mean, it's they're like sisters, and I obviously assume you're not a Catholic, but it's like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. But I think one of the principles or keys to any success we have with a record is not to sit down and talk about it, not to say, okay, we're going away from the trilogy, but to say, hey, to think to ourselves, we've accomplished something great with this trilogy. Let's not lose that, but to kind of force ourselves as individuals to go in different directions, and then the record itself kind of takes shape because we come from a different era. We're producing product and music in 2017, but for fuck's sake, I was born when Elvis was in the army. So I mean, if you think about that time distance, there's a long road that's been traveled and much music, for instance, in my head.
Right.
So I think that when it shows itself as things in the past are influenced, it's really just saying that we don't forget where we come from. But at the same time, let's make sure that it has the brand of Overkill on it when we present it to the public.
Definitely, because like you said, you have a long career, and you, Didi, have been writing for decades now. So even after so many records, the Overkill machine has always churned out memorable albums, time and time again. And the last few records, since the Dave has been part of, he has brought in some of his own influences. And obviously everybody knows that Didi is a perfect rhythm player. His imagination, his riffs are purely based on the rhythm side. And the stuff that Dave adds on top of it is something which is more of like, they're like a team together when it comes to writing songs, which is more or less lacking in other bands we see. For instance, we have bands like Megadeth or Slayer where you have just one guy doing everything. So this approach of mixing things up keeps it much more fresh. Even, thinking about a band like Overkill that's been more than 3 decades now.
Well, I'll tell you something. This is one thing you should remember.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them would be nothing without me. Nothing.
There you go. I completely agree with that.
I'll tell you, it was a funny story. We were in Japan, and, we had to go through translators. And, maybe this describes our relationship and something you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And Didi doesn't usually do interviews, but they asked specifically that he was there. So we're going through a translator to the Japanese press, and they asked about our relationship, a little bit like you, gave an outline to it. And he said, Blitz, I'll answer this one. And he said, right to the translator, he said the same thing. Just remember, without me, Blitz would be nothing. Well, I think somewhere in there is my point, because we obviously enjoy each other's company, and though we take our music seriously, I think that there's a sense of humor. We don't take the people so seriously, or our positions so seriously, that we can enjoy each other's company. And to have the addition of Dave now for really a decade and a half. I mean, Dave has been with us since his first record was in the late 90s. It was Overkill. Came in and did the leads. So really an 18-year period. I mean, he's an instrumental part of this team. If the riff starts with Didi, it doesn't get to me until it goes through Dave. When I start writing vocal lines, I think to myself, what a weapon I have musically with Dave Linsk, and I run these vocal lines by him, and he comes back with counter melodies that you can hear in many of the songs on this record, where those counter melodies are important, integral parts of the song. Dave Linsk. So it's a great system we have and a great process, but I think it works because of being able to say funny shit about each other, to be able to take our craft seriously, but to be able to enjoy each other's company.
Definitely. And Andy Sneap has been on board for this now. He always reminds me of Exodus, Accept, Testament. He's right there helping all the bands to attain the vision by not changing their sound, but at the same time, he kind of hones it. So the beauty of the record here, lies in how organic the drums are, the guitar sound is. And that's the beauty of Andy. And I'm sure for you guys, this must have been like a conscious decision to have him, because, it has a sort of a throwback 90s Overkill vibe when it comes to that, the area in which the guitars and the drums kind of, complement each other.
But I agree 100%. It's about enhancement. The thing, we wanted Andy involved with us, I mean, as far back as the trilogy we talked about, and it was always a scheduling conflict, but we know he's the state of the art, and we know that we wanted a more organic drum that danced with a heavier guitar. Right. We didn't want a guitar that cut through from the mouth and the nose, but more so from the chest and the stomach. We wanted something that had weight to it, that would hold up some of the low end in the mix. And this is, in my opinion, a unique mix for Andy. Andy mixes Accept like Accept, or Exodus like Exodus, or Arch Enemy like Arch Enemy. But Overkill wanted something that said, hey, we already have a path with regard to how we sound. We need that moved up 3, 4, 5 notches,
right,
but still to have it be recognizable as Overkill, not as, let's say, an Andy Sneap mix, but an Overkill presentation with an Andy Sneap mix.
Right, that makes sense. And obviously in the bands over the period of time, kind of, let's say the critics or let's say the fans in general complain about the bass not being audible in let's say a thrash metal album. But here you have, Didi is all over the place. I mean, we can hear Didi, we can hear Dave, we can hear you. So the mix and how the entire thing is executed is very important. You're not losing an instrument throughout this entire chaos that's happening in the record.
That's another great point. I mean, we subscribe to the Motorhead philosophy of everything louder than everything else. Right. But the idea though is to get that to be audible in a mix. There's a fine line between loud, bombastic, and clear, and irritating. I mean, it's just a very, very fine line in a mix. So it has to be. The volumes, the levels of each individual instrument have to be really, really looked at under a microscope to get them all out in front. But at the same time, have it sound as a mix as opposed to one instrument dominating.
Definitely. Now, I want to talk about the title track, a monstrous 7-minute long on a very grand scale. Got that slow grinding riff. you're singing clean on top of it, and then towards the later part of the track, you have this huge background choir. Now, this is Overkill at its finest when it comes to kind of, giving a homage to the punk side, your influences, let me say, Didi's influences. Tell us about this track. I mean, it's very different than what I've heard in a long time from Overkill.
Well, when it first started coming together, this was the track for me that was the hardest to visualize because when it was presented to me after going through Didi and Dave, and obviously I was there at the demos, I looked at it as parts, as pieces, and as opposed to one song. And as it started coming together, you start getting a buzz in your stomach or a chill up your spine to say, wait a second, all we need is to bridge these parts, and if we do it correctly, we're going to be holding something special. Right. And I think when I was done doing my parts, I'm actually sitting in the same place where I finished the song. Mm-hmm. I have a little studio in my office, and when I finished my parts, I think the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, I'm going to have this played at my funeral. So it was, I think if it has that type of an impact, the point is that you have something special. It grew. It started as a riff. It started with a little keyboard pad at the end going out, and then everything else kind of grew around it. So it was really the song that probably had the most nurturing with regard to our attention and our writing. And it was being changed right up until the last minute. That was the last tracks that were sent to Andy were background vocals that four of us had done and tried over and over again to get it correct. So it's probably the one that was the most labor intensive, but probably one of the ones that was the most satisfying because of all the different elements it holds, and then the last feeling it gives you as the record goes out.
Definitely, yeah. And you on this record, I mean, it's typical Bobby Blitz. There's a lot of sing-along moments on the album, and I can clearly visualize like chorus of Goddamn Trouble or even Mean Green Killing Machine, which fans are going to scream along the moment the track is being played live. How was your experience on this record when it comes to your vocals? Because there's a saying that as the age increases, your intensity decreases, but you are otherwise.
Well, the older I get, the more I realize my mother was right. I am special. So, she would always say to me, I think it was one of the first things that she said to me when I was a kid, "You're very special. You should know that." And I just like saying that also. But I think what happens from my personal perspective with regard to presentation or singing is that 18 records later, I'm still the student. There is a trademark sound that I use, and it is that screaming sound. But I'm not really afraid to go other places that I'm less comfortable with, whether it be melodic background vocals, whether it be harmonies, whether it be almost pop vocal lines in some cases, but applying them with my energy. And I think if I can continue to learn, I can continue to be relevant. And what we're talking about with regard to the big picture is continuation, because it's not about going somewhere. It's about really enjoying the journey. Because when I get to wherever I'm supposed to be going, there won't be this anymore. True. So it's really about the journey and picking up things along the way. And I think it's probably, if pride is my biggest sin, the pride I have in this band for being relevant in 2017 is my biggest pride, because we all will push, and we will push each other, and we will push individually by learning or trying new things. And at the end of the day, put the Overkill brand on it. And I think that's where my pride and that's where our presentation comes from.
Absolutely. You absolutely nailed it. Bobby, you've been touring for a long, long time. I mean, you meet fans and lately, in fact, not even lately, it's been a while since we have the sort of a VIP packages for the fans, where probably seems the only way for fans to meet the band they admire these days. So some of these come at this very inflated price on top of the standard ticket costs. So for you, as someone who's been touring around the world for decades and decades, and you have so many fans who want to meet, take a photo with you, shake a hand with you, how different is your thought when it comes to someone like Overkill having VIP packets or Overkill against VIP packets?
Well, I'm not against it, but we're also not hard to meet. I've always looked at one of the assets or one of the the positive elements of being in a band is that you get to meet people. If you don't like people, you shouldn't necessarily be in a band. Is the way I look at it, because from where I sit, I'm part of this community. I don't have, I'm not to the side, I'm not above, I'm not below, but I'm part of the machine. There's always been a sixth entity in this band, and that entity is the audience. And many of these people have become my friends, over a 35-year period. Many of them have come to my house and have broken bread with me and had a beer on the deck and watched a football game, so it's, and these are people I've met along the way. So I don't think of myself as anything but somebody who, unless for some reason I don't have the time and I'm trying to catch a plane or something, I always take the time. But when it comes to a VIP package, I think you have to understand that in the modern era, businesses have to be reinvented. And that reinvention comes primarily from the technology we possess, that there are just less sales of records, and this is just a fact. But the idea of VIP is that it gives a person a choice, not to just get a handshake and an autograph and how are you, but to sit there and talk with somebody. It could be up to 20 minutes, and I think that if the person decides to do that, it actually doesn't help the band directly, because we would have done it anyway. But for sure, it helps the promoter. And if the promoter can make that happen, the band can then continue to tour because the guarantees become more solid based on the price of them. Now, you're not going to see at an Overkill show, there is not 200 people on a VIP. I mean, there is 20, at max. I remember touring Overkill Creator. I think the biggest VIP we had was, 40 people in New York, but that was over 2,000 tickets. So if those 40 people choose to do so, and it solidifies the fact that touring can still happen based on sales being down, then I'm all for it. But it doesn't mean that I wouldn't shake hands in Newark Airport or in Mumbai or in London or Tokyo. It's just my nature to like people.
Definitely. I really got the different side of what you said right now with respect to being a fan, and at the same time also from the music and the business side of it. So that's really good to hear that. So, you're obviously going on tour with good friends, Nile. And it's a long tour. It's going to start next month. Has anything been planned to Europe? Because it feels like Europe needs Overkill every year. That's how I feel like, because you got such a strong fan base in Europe, and there's never enough for them to see Overkill live every year.
That's it's a good question. We just had gone through Germany and Italy and some of the Eastern European territories, Poland, Czech Republic, etc. through November, and it was supposed to be for the release of this record. The record got delayed just by miscommunication. There was nobody got sick, and there was no arguing or no disasters. It was just a very simple miscommunication, and I always say that I blame nuclear blast 51%, but I will take 49% of the blame. But we released a single prior to that, Our Finest Hour, and performed it on the road while we were doing it. What we plan to do is obviously come back and do some festivals. There's a few lined up at this point. But we will come back in 2017 and do the Headbangers Ball Tour toward the end of the year. We'll be doing it as support. Yeah, we'll be doing it as support, but the headliner has not confirmed it as of yet, so I can't really say who it is. But we confirmed it as far back as November, saying that we're in, and it's about a month long. It does a primarily Western Europe run, and should be fantastic. But I agree with you. I mean, Europe has always been really a second home for us. It's always been a stronghold of this community. I think when metal was a dirty word in the United States, there was still German, Dutch, Belgian, French, Italian, Polish, Indian metal fans that were still required, had the hunger for this. So it was. It's been the area that has, in my opinion, kept this alive. I love it.
So if you had to sum up the grinding wheel in a sentence, what would you say?
I would say quintessential Overkill 2017. Everything you need and just a little bit more.
A little bit more. Perfect. Bobby Blitz. So guys, new Overkill record coming out Feb 10th via Nuclear Blast. Thank you so much, my friend, for having a chat again. Always a great time having, a kick-ass conversation with you.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And we are on Metal Wani. You're in the right place.
Thanks a lot, buddy. I'll catch you soon. Take care of yourself.
Okay, bro. Later.